I'm
who's
not
here for the technical issues.
Absolutely, I'm not quite sure what happened there. It's yeah, an unusual chain of events, but there we go. We're here. So
hey, we still have some people here watching us. So I think you're a panelist, so you can see how many people we got. Right? Yeah, thank you for sticking with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for joining me, Andy. It's been a long time coming, and yeah, really interested to hear what you're going to present to us. For those of you who don't know, Andy is from the Global E-commerce Experts, who are experts in helping people sell outside of the marketplace they're currently selling in, especially in Europe. But Andy would drill into that a little bit more. Yeah, what are you going to talk to us about today?
Absolutely. So yeah, no, thanks, and like I say, thanks again. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll run through the various bits I'm going to touch on with you today. So okay, Rich, if you can confirm that you can see my screen, that would be fantastic.
I can indeed.
Wonderful. So yeah, so I want to talk to you about expansion into Europe and how Global E-commerce Experts particularly can help you with that. But just a bit of an overview really about the challenges and the pain points that people experience with transitioning into Europe. So today's agenda, particularly why Europe, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the attractiveness of the UK and Europe, and the breakdown of steps to success. We'll talk a little bit about the services available to you, but also what ones you're going to experience collectively when you're starting your journey into Europe. The success pathway, which is devised by Global E-commerce Experts, which gives you a step-by-step guide if you're transitioning into Europe. And of course, we'll kick off, we'll start the end, sorry, with some questions and some answers. So I'm Andrew Cooper. Thank you for the brief introduction, Rich. Head of Sales and Marketing at Global E-commerce Experts. Involved in e-commerce for circa 4 years, and I work with a fantastic team of people at Global E-commerce Experts over a wide range of services, which we'll come on to in a minute, who make the transition into the UK and Europe smooth. So we successfully expand brands. You can see we're currently working with circa 2,000 sellers, expanding for internationally into the UK and Europe, and we can support with every element of that journey. So I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a moment. Just some stats here about the UK and Europe. Now, this isn't going to be new to most of us, or all of us, because this is common knowledge, as it were. But what we're trying to illustrate here really is that the UK and Europe is a huge market for e-commerce. And when we're talking about matching up against the US, which is the biggest e-commerce marketplace, your Amazon, it's really attractive. So we're talking about it as a stepping stone and an opportunity to increase your sales from the US into the EU or UK, or Europe into UK, and what that looks like in terms of the opportunity. So you can see the marketplaces there are not too dissimilar in numbers, but also the opportunity in terms of monetary value for e-commerce are marginally different. So there's the opportunity in the UK and EU to transition to increase, or 80% is the actual number here, of your sales from the US into the UK and EU. And the key thing to take out of this particular slide is that it's, to lots of people, it seems like quite an arduous task to transition into Europe, and the challenges that are sometimes faced with that. People think it's going to be a difficult transition to make. But actually, when you've got the right knowledge and people behind you to do that, it's actually a relatively easy transition. We'll come on to a little bit more about that in a minute. But the process doesn't have to be a difficult one. We all know, just touching on there actually, about the split from Brexit. So the UK splitting from the EU. Something else important to note as well, that the people think that split has caused some issues. Yes, arguably it has in some cases, but there's the flip side of that is actually it's caused some elements of it to actually improve, and particularly in the e-commerce world in some areas.
I have a quick question for you on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were the biggest changes that Brexit caused for sellers in the UK who are selling in the EU, or vice versa?
Yeah, great question. So the biggest challenge being the free trade of movement. I mean, the slide back there about the 80% reduction in traffic from UK to EU. See, before Brexit, be able to ship or fulfill goods nice and easily between UK and EU, being part of the European Union. So that becomes slightly more difficult when we split, and subsequently, there's a European fulfillment network currently, but the actual movement of goods now is reduced somewhat. So you need to store your goods in the UK and fulfill them throughout the UK from either FBAs or 3PL, and you need to do the same thing in Europe, whereas before you could combine the two and make that transaction easy. So that, alongside the shipping element of it, we all know the shipping crisis going on at the minute, and how difficult that's proven for people when sending their goods all over the world. That, again, having the ability previously to be able to take goods into the EU and then move them on to the UK was there. Now, you can still do that, but you've got double customs duties and things like that, so it's slightly more difficult. The flip side to that is, so you've got the entirety of the UK market predominantly just buying from the UK. So you have your stock in the UK, and you're going to have a bigger piece of that pie, as it were. Rich, does that answer your question?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Cool, thanks. So the EU expansion pathway, we've got another illustration at the end of this presentation, which is slightly more colourful than this, but this just gives you the 7 steps that we need to take to expand your brand into Europe. So we're going to touch on these individually, but ultimately, if you do all of these steps, you get to the end, then you would have successfully expanded into Europe. So the step one here, market research, feasibility study, and product sourcing. So the first step ordinarily for people expanding is the feasibility study and identifying if that product can be sold. And then if it can be sold, what market's best for it, what market share they're likely to have, and what how much of that market share and I suppose revenue they're going to get at the end of it. So that's a key piece for people to do. And of course that can be conducted by themselves using various pieces of software, but to actually stop and invest the time with somebody to look at that and know about the nuances of going into each individual country. There's some obvious ones here, such as, would you bring a Stars and Stripes flag from the US into the UK and expect it to do extremely well? Arguably not. So there's some obvious ones there, but there's some things where there's some other products that doing really, really well in Europe or in the US, and then we want to know whether they're going to do equally as well in the UK. It's a good process to go through. And then of course a product sourcing element there of the sourcing of raw materials. Do we, if your product's currently been made in China or India, could there be elsewhere that you could source those raw materials to keep your costs down? Which is a really, really big thing at the moment, which I'm sure some, if not all, of e-commerce sellers are going through that journey at the minute to understand if that's a possibility. But absolutely identifying where's best, what country's best, what product to sell, identifying and understanding how much opportunity you've got is absolutely vital to kickstarting your journey into wherever in the world, but UK and Europe in our case today. Compliance. So this is the area where the most pain comes from somebody starting out, and just the word resonates, doesn't it? Compliance, and you instantly go into a shell and think, oh no, I've got to go through all of these stages before I even consider selling product. So there's 2 pieces here. There's the product compliance and the business compliance, which is the VAT. So to start with the labeling and product compliance, absolutely vital that expansion into Europe, you go through the appropriate channels to make your label compliant. It's a key thing. Amazon, in particular, are really, really hot on this and make sure that your product label has to be compliant. So going through that journey of understanding what needs to be on it, if you've already got one, what needs to be removed from it, or any changes that need to happen to that label to ensure compliance. Once that's done, you've got the label bit, you've then got your product bit. So providing that when you've had it manufactured and tested appropriately, you've got that documentation, should be absolutely fine from a compliance perspective. But you may need to have some more of that done in order to make your product compliance. And we can go into some more detail if anyone wants to later on about where that particular product fits in regulations such as CE marking. Is it a food or cosmetics? But once you've got your label compliant, from that perspective, you're good to go. You'll then need a responsible person or an address service, or you may have heard it referred to as an economic operator or a food business operator in the food world. You'll need one of them to operate in the region in which you're selling. Once you've got that, so your product's compliant, your label's compliant, you've got responsible persons, you've got an address attached to your label, which is somebody in that region who can represent you, then your product's good to go. You then need to arrange your business insurance, your business compliance, which is of course the VAT aspect of it. Now, you need VAT in any country where you're storing goods. So if you decide to go to, just the UK and just sell in Germany, for example, then you'd be required to have a VAT number in the UK and a VAT number in Germany. You can then fulfill from Germany to the rest of Europe if that's your desired route, and you can just declare your VAT in Germany. If you then decide to branch out and start storing goods in Amazon in France or Spain or Italy, you'd need to get your VAT registered in there. And then there are of course some other areas with VAT, such as the one-stop shop and other areas which we can certainly go into a bit more detail before. Now, what was relatively new, and for those of you who are selling in Europe or experience selling in Europe, is the EPR. So this is your packaging, extended producer responsibility. So this is some countries in Europe require that you pay additional fees for the end of life of that product. So what happens to the packaging, etc. So this is something which is relatively new, but it's going to very, very quickly step up to all of Europe, no doubt, and probably most of the world eventually, as people are becoming increasingly more conscious about what's happening with packaging. And then barcodes and trademarks. Of course, trademarks, fantastic thing to have on your product. Whether you decide to initially go down that route, you can say it for a later date. So that's the compliance bit. So it does sound very complicated in some areas, and it does sound like it's going to be quite an arduous task to go through that stage before you even consider selling. But actually, if you speak to the right people and have the right journey gone through with you, then you'll be absolutely fine. Then a marketplace launch. So this is an area, Richard, you'll be no doubt more familiar with regards to the Amazon launch and all the various exciting elements that come with that. Yes, this is about identifying. So what you've done your feasibility study, you've identified, yes, this product's going to do well. The compliance bit, we've got that teed up, or you've got that organised. Then understanding, how you're going to launch into that marketplace, who you're going to use for shipping. Have you got your freight forward and your customs element sorted? Do you know where you're going to go? Do you know what port you're going to go into? Have you got any preference with that? Are you going to go air freight? You're going to go sea freight? It's identifying how you're going to get your goods there, to ensure that you're keeping your cost to a minimum, and obviously your return on investment as high as you can. Then your payments, so your payment platform, how are you going to be receiving payments depending on where you are in the world. Then your platform, key one. So Amazon, biggest marketplaces, we're aware of that in most countries, but not all. So identifying if there are any other platforms that are best suited to your product. As an example, in the UK, if you've got a handmade product, whilst it may well do well on Amazon, there's other platforms such as Etsy, where you could put which it might be a better fit for that particular product, or even not better fit, maybe just another arm to it, another string to your bow. And then, of course, listings and translations. So the listings, if you're selling your goods on Amazon in a particular country, you're going to have your listings sorted, but also translations. You're going to have them translated into the country in which you're selling goods. And this goes the same for your label as well. So your label, and the way you're selling your goods, you'll need to have it translated into that. Which again, from speaking of our clients and their experience, seems like quite an arduous task to have that orchestrated and making sure that it's optimized for the client. So a key area, but getting that right is absolutely key. And it can be done in some ways which are definitely less arduous and less difficult via peel and reveal labels. So you don't have to go making your label into 10 different languages. You can have it all on one and just have it consultina and out. Is a really key way to make that less painful. 3PL. So we were at Amazon and their fulfillment network and storage limitations. Often their inventory limitations can be quite tough. So it's identifying if you do, or would you want the use of a 3PL to offer some other avenues to your fulfillment. Absolutely, without a doubt, recommendation as much of your stock into Amazon, if Amazon's your chosen platform, as you can. One, speed, so you get some other benefits of having that. But it's highly likely if you're shipping higher volumes of goods that you're going to need the use of a 3PL. Few benefits of this, of course, which won't be new to anybody. But one is being able to drip feed stock into Amazon as and when, but also switch on other platforms and having them as almost a prime enabled location. So you can switch on your Amazon FBM, or what Amazon are doing now, which is fulfilling from lots of other platforms under the Prime badge, which is extremely exciting. So they can support you with that. But equally for your other platforms, if you're going on to like eBay or BOL.com in the Netherlands, you can offer that similar process to your clients. And then, of course, if you have any returns or rework doing, they can support you with that. We have facilities in the UK and the EU, so we can fulfill to all of the UK and all of Europe, and complete the rework and returns work as well, back from Amazon and other platforms.
So, sorry to interrupt and take a step back here, but I was just thinking about the EPR. Do you support with EPR? Because I know it's, I seem to remember it was just released in Germany or pushed out of Germany last week, wasn't it? Yep. And obviously if people don't have that in place, I think they have like till the end of this month or something to fix it, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very quick thing. Yeah, you're right. I mean, they've given a very short windows on it. And yes, absolutely. If anyone's interested in discussing EPR in more depth, then reach out to me after this, and be delighted to have a chat with you about it. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those things that I think is very quickly going to become the norms I mentioned earlier, and then we're going to have such a limited time to be able to put it into place. I mean, the process of registration is not a difficult process from once you know what you've got to do. So it's not a lengthy process to get to that, but they are tightening up that sort of time scale to enable us to do it. So yes, absolutely, Rich. Yeah, if anyone watching or not and get this later, then please reach out. Yeah,
by the end of this month, make sure if you're selling in Germany, because otherwise you're going to get a big fine and you won't be able to sell anymore. Sorry, carry on.
No, not at all. No, thanks. So the step 5 is obviously promotion. So you've got your goods on the water or preparations moving on the water, and now's the time to start thinking about how am I going to really kickstart and propel my brand in Europe. So starting to think about your PPC advertising, and to all e-commerce sellers in your role, this isn't going to be new and or rocket science to many of you, and you're probably better versed on me on what works for you, or you will be better versed than me on what works for your particular brand. But it's about identifying in that particular region what's going to work from a vouchers and deals perspective. So looking at some competition and seeing what they're doing. Social, really key, and we talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then we can offer you account health checks, which I think are really, really important. So these are quarterly or 6 monthly or annually, whichever you feel is appropriate. Re-looking at your Amazon account and diving into the real nitty gritty about what's happened over the past quarter or 6 months, and looking at how that can support in your movement for the future. Are there things on there which could be tweaked? Are there things that could be changed, or even put in to progress, move that forward? And then, of course, a website. So Amazon e-commerce platforms, absolutely fantastic and absolutely the right way to go. But then we want to branch off and start looking at building our own websites, or do we want to branch off and start looking at multi-marketplaces, looking at other places we can go, and the list building as well, improvements to that, improvements to A+ content, optimization, and then Dream 100, which is the social element of it. So this is devised by me, and the name of the gentleman escapes me. This is about pushing your brand on social media to out to 100 people who have got 100 like-minded followers or like-minded in your particular brand, and just organically growing that reach. And that's really exciting prospect. So again, if people want to discuss that in more depth, I won't go into too much detail here because we're conscious that we're slightly delayed and we've got a bit more to get through. But yeah, that's a great way and a really important step, I think, to move in, particularly staying with the current times of social media. And then the growth aspect. So this is a final stage, as it were, and not final as in definitive end to the e-commerce journey of that particular brand, but it's identifying the more marketplaces that are suitable. Now, there's so many marketplaces, particularly in Europe, that just sort of go under the radar because Amazon so heavily spoke about, but there's lots of little ones which actually do far better in some countries than Amazon. So it's about realizing where that is to go. Now, just as a side note for Global E-commerce Experts, we actually offer, as part of our journey, a free growth manager who will identify this for our clients. So they will look at what's doing particularly well and then where the little pockets of extra success can come from. So just a little something to chip in with that, Rich, there. I hope you don't mind. And then the retail world. So what a beast, I think, we can sort of say with e-commerce in some aspects is trumping the retail world, but it's still an area of, huge opportunity. So is that something which the brand is at a point where they want to now move into retail? We can support with helping people transition into that world. And then the final element there is, of course, exit. So some people want to sell, build their brand, sell it, build another one, sell it. We can support with that as and when required, or optimizing it and getting it to a point where it can be sold if it's not quite ready to yet. So thank you for that. I've sort of ran through that 7-step journey in what feels like a bit of a nutshell, but this is GEE's expansion pathway. So we spoke about the individual elements through there and branched off ever so slightly to some of the other ones, but this is an end-to-end solution for growth. So if you start at the beginning, and not everybody's going to be right at the marketplace research point, there's going to be some brands who are much further down the line here, and obviously that's absolutely fine. But if you were to follow every step of this as a new brand transition into Europe, you followed all these step by step, you would have a successful e-commerce expansion. So thank you. And again, I want to apologise for the mishap at the beginning, but we got through that in record time, I think, and hopefully I haven't delayed anyone too much. But yeah, please feel free. Is there any questions?
I have a question before anyone else can jump in. You mentioned other marketplaces. What other marketplaces do you support people's expansion to? Obviously, Amazon. You've mentioned BOL. Yeah. What other kinds of platform have you got the experience to help people with?
So we partner strongly with Amazon, Wish, and eBay. There are our biggest platforms that we support from a integration perspective, but we integrate our clients with all of Europe's e-commerce platforms if required, and we'll identify, things like BOL.com, we'll identify if they want to particularly be selling in the Netherlands, we can support them with that. So yeah, it's really a question of, what can't we integrate with, but absolutely the key ones for us, as I just mentioned there, eBay, Amazon, and Wish.
Awesome. Cool. Well, any questions from anybody else? I will say, yeah, you got through that nice and quickly. You did a great job. I'm sorry I didn't give you too much of an introduction at the beginning. I was conscious of the time. I didn't know how long your presentation would take, so I didn't want you to run out.
No worries. I mean, it was a quick run through. As I say, conscious of time and people's time, and thank you for those that stayed on. But yeah, I mean, if there's any questions after this, then feel free to reach out to me directly or expand at globalecommerceexperts.com, and we can support with all elements of EU expansion.
Awesome. So any other questions? Any questions? We'll give it one more minute. Yeah, no, that was awesome. It was very very informative. There was a lot of stuff in there I didn't know, and EPR especially, bringing it up again. We'll definitely share this with everybody who's in here now who may have missed the beginning, and everyone else as well, because I spoke to someone else the other day and they were saying the deadlines just come out of nowhere for Germany and France as well. Before they just started it and said, right, it's going live in a week.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a funny old thing, and I think there'll be much more of that to come as we spoke about earlier. I think people will follow suit, and you can, whilst it's something else, another hoop to jump through, as it were. It's actually a really, really important step for for people to have some form of ownership for that, albeit it's an added cost, of course, but like it is in many cases.
Yeah. I've heard it's relatively expensive depending on the type of product you're selling, right? Something like a torch or something like that, which can fit into like an electronics category as well as like a hazardous or plastic or something like this. Costs just stack up, don't they?
Yeah, it's obviously dependent on the product and what its use is, but yeah, I mean it really depends. But yeah, if people want some more info on where the product may fit, and the good thing, we spoke about the feasibility study, it's things like that which identify areas of, is it going to be as as attractive as one might think. 99% of the time, yes, it is, because the size of the market in the UK and EU is almost as big as the US. So we know it's going to be successful, but it's all of these little things that you've got to, and you're quite right, Richard, you've got to weigh up and take consideration for.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, doesn't look like we've got any questions. If anyone does have any questions, as Andy mentioned, expand@globalecommerceexperts.com. Hit him up. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and doing that. I really appreciate it. And sorry for the technical issues at the beginning. I have no idea what happened.
No apologies if it was something our end, but no, I
don't think so. I think it was just a Zoom issue. But thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Andy, for your time. And yeah, catch up again